How are you this morning?
Good morning, Rafi. Good morning to your listeners. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm really grateful for your patience. Sorry about that distraction. Okay,
problem.
so I'm very excited to speak a little bit about increasing our energy supply and also being more responsible about how we consume. So are you excited by these recent overtures by the minister that we are able to diversify our supply? Or does this feel like, another one of his very slow processes?
Yes, well put. I am excited. So I think I have to provide some context here that over the next 10 years, we're planning to decommission a lot of coal-fired power stations anyway. So it was always part of our plan to bring in this diversification, bring out solar and some gas generation with batteries. But I think what they've seen now is we really need relief in the country economically. And pulling all of these projects forward is going to try to help them stimulate the economy. But I think it's really important to understand that this doesn't happen overnight, like you said, a slow process. These things are pretty tricky. These are new technologies, and it's going to take years for us to roll out. So that's why I'm coming from the point of, what do we need right now in this country? We're struggling with a 10% problem. We can't, Eskom are struggling to meet our demand. So it's actually on us. We need to lower our consumption. This has multiple benefits for the business and the grid.
Okay. So, this is not something that I as a consumer can help much with. A home consumer.
So home consumers, that's not really what I'm talking about, but anybody can make a difference. At home, I've read papers where they estimate that 20% of our consumption is happening when we're not even at home, just from appliances that are on idle. So anybody can do something about it just by turning things off at home. But in terms of big business, in commercial and industrial sectors, consuming pretty much half of the national energy consumption, we're responsible for quite a large portion of that. Therefore, we have almost a bit of an obligation to play ball here.
100%. Has nothing been changed? For example, we must have seen different trends occurring during lockdown. Has nothing changed, with the movement of a lot of work to home spaces, in terms of offices, or is this something that's more in the industrial space, sector-wise?
So, you're right. We did see a decrease in demand during lockdown, up to 30%, which is why load shedding wasn't so bad. But luckily it was during winter as well where we struggled. But as we came out of it, approaching August, that's when load shedding started happening again, as all businesses started going back to normal operations. But just to put it into perspective, there's a group of 26 companies called the Energy Intensive Users Group of South Africa that consume about 40% of the national energy consumption. So that's 26 companies, almost half of the consumption in the country.
Wow.
So if you affect the consumption there, you have an effect on the country. You have an effect on the grid.
Right.
So rather than waiting 10 years for 12,000 megawatts, we can decrease our consumption now and say 5 gigawatts or 10 gigawatts right now.
I remember in the early days of load shedding, they used to just ask the aluminium smelters to slow down. You know what I mean? So they could easily, there was a relationship between business and government where government could say, do you mind taking the energy, relieving the grid a little bit? Are those conversations not happening?
So I'm sure they are. And, it's also on those businesses to lower their consumption means they're also paying less costs. So I'm sure they're trying very hard. But for the normal business who doesn't deem themselves to be very energy intensive, could be paying 10 million rand a year. And they don't realize that, when we rock up as energy partners and install meters and have a look at consumption, we can lower it sometimes by 40%. So if you expand that across all businesses, I'm sure that they will also have the same problems.
Right.
And if you just lower that consumption, our energy partners, we have all this data. We did a calculation where if we could reduce the commercial and industrial sector's consumption by 20%, we would have achieved that 10% problem that we have.
Oh, wow.
And this is immediate. You can do this now. It's free. Yep. You can just reduce your consumption by doing multiple things, but you're paying less. So what better incentive do you need as a business during COVID?
Well, what are businesses saying in response? Are they pushing back?
No, they're not. I think it's just a knowledge gap. So there's a lot of training that needs to be done. I think the way that we consume energy is going to have to change as we diversify. We aren't just pumping coal anymore. Now we're bringing out renewables and battery storage. We've got to be smarter.
All right. And how long, as you say, okay, so that's quite immediate. And how quickly can we get these guys over the line?
So if we rock up as energy partners to a client and we run an energy program, we almost immediately identify through visibility. We install meters and we can actually see the consumption. We can see it. So we know exactly when energy is being wasted, when it's being used, when it doesn't need to be. And it's as simple as maybe turning off your air conditioning or HVAC on the weekends. So that's now. That's this week. That's immediate. Rather than waiting years and years for power stations to be rolled out and commissioned.
All right. Well, you need everybody to call Energy Partners International if you run a business, if you use any electricity. Tadhg Theron will take you through. He's the commercial head of Energy Partners International, and I hope able to give you very simple ways to reduce your consumption by 20% immediately and help us with keeping this grid alive. Tadhg, thank you so much for giving us that perspective.
Thank you.